dear listeners, today's lecture is about personal cyber hygiene. And this lecture is part of e-government support project in Tonga, supported by World Bank. My name is Epp Maaten. I'm representing the e-governance academy from Estonia, and we have been the implementers of the cybersecurity project in last 2 years in Tonga. So what we will talk about today. First, we'll look at the threat environment and also talk about basic definitions like cybersecurity, risk, and others. Then we also talk about personal good practice, how to behave in cyberspace. What are the basic rules for passwords, and also how to behave in social media, and many other topics around us. So let's have a closer look to the threat environment and the definitions. You all have heard the word cybersecurity, but what it really means. What is the purpose of cybersecurity? Well, to say it short, the purpose is to protect the devices we use, the services we access, services like websites or information systems. And also the aim of the cybersecurity is to prevent unauthorized access to the data. So altogether, the purpose is to reduce the risk becoming a victim of cyber incident or cyber attack. And if we look some statistics made a few years ago, what kind of problems the users experience in online world. The biggest threat or risk what people see is called phishing. It means there are different fraudulent messages in people's email boxes. The second biggest threat for them has been that they have been redirected to the wrong websites, and then some personal data or other information have been asked. Also, people have experienced the loss of documents, pictures, or other kind of data. So these are just typical problems according to Eurostat, what people are facing in online environment. So therefore, it's really important to understand the current threats and what are the main groups of threats. There might be equipment failure, there might be environmental disruptions, there might be human or machine errors or purposeful attacks. So as you see from that slide, attacks is not the only threat. There are many other threats we have to be aware of when we use digital environment. To understand this cyberspace and threats in it, let's look at the current trends. What kind of threats we see are more visible. So the first one already in last few years has been ransomware attacks. I will talk later in more detail what it means, ransomware attacks, but it is type of malware that is coming to your devices and will cause some harm. Also, secondly, the cyber criminals are increasingly motivated by monetization of their activities. What it means, they want to get really visible financial gain from their actions, from their attacks. And cryptocurrency is the most common payout method for them, for cyber criminals. And also quite common in recent years is so-called cryptojacking. What it means is that your devices are infected and will be used for crypto mining for somebody else. Also, if you look at the trends in recent years, we can recognize that COVID has influenced also the cyberspace quite a lot. And the COVID-19 is still a dominant lure in campaigns for email attacks. What it means that you might get different messages where the title is something with COVID just because to get your attention that you would open them. Also, COVID has influenced the target that healthcare sector has been the target for cyber criminals. But still, beside of the COVID, there are traditional DDoS campaigns. DDoS means distributed denial of service campaigns, which aim is to stop some services, at least temporarily. So these type of attacks are still quite common. And also different human errors and misconfigurations are still used to introduce different kind of malicious activity and attacks. So, as I said, even if the attacks are very commonly mentioned as a main threat, what we do see based on statistics that human errors are most of the reasons why there are incidents happening with our devices or with our systems. So let's talk about attackers. If they prepare their attack, what are they looking for? What is their aim? The first group of attackers are paid, for example, to get to know trade secrets or some kind of industrial property. So they are attacking the systems which might include this kind of information. Also, there are many attackers who are interested in state or military classified information. But then the third group is already larger, that attackers are also interested in server infrastructure. There are different purposes. They want to know what is in your server, how these servers are really functioning, because they can use this knowledge to prepare next attacks. Also, the cyber criminals are interested in personal data. Passwords, usernames, these are the data which is really attractive for them. And of course, financial data, your bank data, for example, like credit card numbers. These are also the data that attackers are looking for. So let's go further and look at the main attack types. As I mentioned, ransomware is quite common nowadays. And what it means, this ransomware attack, it's type of attack where the actors take control of target assets and demand the ransom in exchange for the return of the assets, availability, or confidentiality. So, and here, when we talk about ransomware attack, there are three key elements: the asset, the actions, and then in the end, the blackmail. So we might think that this is not important really, that ransomware, when my system is temporarily not available. So what might happen? But here is an example from Germany 2 years ago, when there was a ransomware attack on a specific hospital. There were people in the hospital and they couldn't be treated, so the hospital had to put the patients to another hospital, which actually caused the death of some patients. So if the hospital couldn't really use their IT systems, it meant also that there were really big impact on the work of that hospital. But what can be done with this ransomware? Ransomware is a malware, what this kind of malware can really do? It can lock your systems or computer, it can encrypt your data, it can delete your data, or it can steal your data. So all four possibilities how this malware can be used. And what are these assets this malware is targeting? These are your files, or your folders, or the memory is locked, or the database content, like the data is deleted or encrypted. So these are the targets of this kind of attack. And how to then mitigate when you really experience this kind of attack? There are really simple rules what you should follow to be protected for any kind of attacks. And the easiest part is please do patch your systems. Update your systems regularly. This is the first rule for mitigation. Also, it's really important to be aware what do you click really. So try to avoid clicking on links which you really don't know where they are coming from. Also, a simple rule we all know is two-factor authentication. It means you need two tools, like a password and your mobile phone, to access some information system. And especially it's very important if you happen to be an administrator of some kind of information system, because then you have more rights and bigger access to the system. And if somebody gets your authentication data, the more loss can be done. Also, when we talk about mitigation, then backup is the key word here. In case your data is deleted or encrypted, then backup is the good solution which helps you to recover from the attack and put your systems back in work. Also, there are good training materials and exercises how to be prepared for ransomware. So these kind of tests and trainings are also useful if you are really like owner of the very important and sensitive data. And also insurance is a key word today's world, which might help also to recover from this kind of attacks. When we talk about ransomware attacks, in some point there is time to negotiate. What it means whether you pay the ransom or you don't do it. Let's look what happens if you decide to pay. It does not give you any guarantees that you actually get back your access or your data, because you never know what these cyber criminals decide to do. So you can just lose your money and don't get back your assets. But it happens also, this negotiation ends successfully and you get back your assets as well. The second option is that you are not paying the ransom. And then you might be sure that your information will be deleted or will stay locked. So this really becomes reality, and you have to find different ways to recover from that kind of attack. But it's just important to mention here that paying the ransom is not a guarantee that the story will end successfully. Let's look at the other type of threats and attacks. In today's world, this supply chain risk is growing. And what it means, this supply chain risk. I think in Tonga case, it's quite easy now for you to understand. This is a picture of undersea cable, and you are very well aware that half a year ago you lost your internet connection because these undersea cables were broken. And it means that your supply is really depending on this simple one cable. So what is the solution here, let's say? Not to be dependent on one cable. This is the picture of undersea cables in your region between different islands in Pacific Ocean. And every year, I would say there are more and more cables in the sea. So the possibility to guarantee the redundancy is just to have another option, just to have another cable. Of course, this is quite expensive, but still this is what gives you a guarantee to survive the attacks. If one cable is really broken, then you can use another cable. So, and as you see, your neighboring islands, Fiji, on Fiji, they have already several options, and they have mitigated this risk in that way. But when building new cables, there is another aspect to also consider. This is geopolitics, that usually these cables are built by some companies, and also they have certain effect politically, whether you want to be that your market is really governed by US companies or Chinese companies. This is the choice to make. And also third option here to consider is what can be alternatives to the undersea cables. We all know that satellite is one option, but quite expensive. In some cases, radio frequencies are also possible to get. So there are many alternatives to consider and to solve the situation like what you had in last winter in Tonga. And as you know, also in Tonga, this cable, the reparation of some cable takes months. So some areas in your country will be without good connection for months. This was just an example of supply chain risks, but supply chain also can be different devices you need, like routers or servers. What is important to consider is that try not to make yourself dependent on one source, but try to look what are the alternatives and to be prepared to use these alternatives. When we talk about threats, there is a third example, what I've seen also when browsing on Tonga's website is that the integrity of website is important as well. And what it means integrity here is to protect your websites, official websites, especially governmental websites, by using encryption methods. There are certain protocols used like TLS, Transport Layer Security Protocol, which is exactly doing this kind of protection. And this picture here shows that If your website is not protected, then browsers give you warnings. They say to you that there are certain security risks ahead, and browser is asking whether to proceed or not. So if you see this kind of warning on the websites which you are using, and if you know who is the owner of this kind of website, you should really inform these people that there is something wrong with this website. There is also nowadays browsers offering a lot of help, like Firefox or the other common browsers that if you look around, then you can really see and tell whether this connection to a website is secure or not. On this picture, you see this little padlock in the center. So this kind of padlock should be on the top part of every website. It really shows you that this website is then using an encrypted channel and it's secure. And if this padlock is open or there is some question mark, then it's really something that you should react on that. And there are good free solutions also, which you in Tonga could use to make your websites more secure. There are just 2 examples here on that slide, which you should look at if you have problems with integrity or your websites. And there are also good tools. You can test your own websites. On this screen, you will recognize some email addresses, website addresses, which I really recommend to look at, like this hardenized.com, because if you put your URL, your address of your website to that website, to that hardenized environment, it will tell you immediately what kind of warnings you have, where are the gaps and where are the weaknesses. So it's easy to do, and then it's also easier to repair your websites. Well, let's go now to the next topic. Let's talk about social engineering. What it means, social engineering? It means that people are hacked as opposed to technical hacking. So here the target is to manipulate people, not really the devices. So social engineering is actually a people problem. And why these people make these kind of mistakes, or which are then used maliciously? Because people are not informed about different possibilities, how they can be manipulated. People also sometimes are not motivated to learn even about how they can be manipulated. So there is no interest to learn more, to behave better in online environment. And what are these common target groups when it comes to social engineering attacks? Of course, if you are working like IT support or administrator of some IT systems, then you are a very common target for manipulations, because you have good access to different IT systems that might be interesting for the attackers. But also, social engineering and manipulation is not always in a digital world. So if you work like a receptionist in some institution, also it might happen that physically the manipulation takes place, that people just get physical access to your premises Maybe they are interested to get to the server rooms, but first they have to enter the first main door. So be aware if you are belonging to this group. The same applies to security guards. Also, it happens, this manipulation might happen in physical world, not only in digital world. And also a common target group for manipulations and social engineering are executives. People who have power, people who can give orders, like tell the accountant department to pay some bills to certain bank account. So these are exactly the people that attackers are looking for to manipulate. And as I said, we have to be aware that we might be the target of social engineering, that we have to increase our knowledge, how it really works. We have to understand why these kind of attacks are happening, and we have to continuously build our awareness. And we shouldn't think that security or IT security is someone else's job. So it's our job to make things secure. And these social engineering attacks can be really complicated. Here is also a picture how to get access to the VIP's mailbox. So let's try to go through to understand how it might happen. So the first stage is just, let's say, a simple email or conversation, just to get to know the person, just to start this interaction. And then it might be one email, but there might be several, just to win the trust. But at a certain point, the second stage comes that these attackers is delivering some malware to the email box or to the computer. So this malicious attacks really starts. Then the third phase is now when this delivery was successful, the attacker got the key that they can use to go further, deeper to the IT system that the VIP is using. Is it some passwords? Is it some kind of other usernames which they might use to get deeper to the institution's IT systems? And then the purpose of the attacker is shown on this fourth phase is to get control over these systems that then they can use and take whatever they want from these IT systems. So that's shortly how it goes, that the purpose is not to start to have a nice conversation with a VIP. The purpose and target is to get really inside the IT system and look what is really valuable and take it from there. Now, let's look at the different types of social engineering attacks. Most common is phishing attack, where people get misleading links that will redirect users to suspicious websites or other environment. And the purpose here is to get personal information, such as names, addresses, bank details, passwords. And also what is quite common, that in these kind of attacks, there is a sense of urgency, that people feel that now I should act immediately. So the attackers are quite good to manipulating people that like, please reply now, otherwise you lose something, let's say. So this urgency is also one part. So please take a moment and think before you do whatever they tell you to do. But not only computers, but today more and more also phones are used for social engineering. So also you can get different phone calls, and again this urgency element might be there, and people then use fake ideas, they use fake profiles, and the same purpose is here as well, to get some personal information about you, which can be used later on then against you. And also messages in your phone. These are nowadays target as well, and they are used as to manipulate people. And for example, you get some kind of bank message from your bank, and there is another link in that message, and this message says, please click immediately to that link, say to change your password or something like this. This is also a very good advice here. Please read carefully and think, is it really necessary to click on these kind of links? So be aware that whatever drops in your email box or your messages into your iPhone, you should be aware that actually it might be some kind of attempt to manipulate you. And here is an example, just to explain how you can check whether this message, what you got in your phone, is it really real? On that picture, we can see that there is a major bank sending you a message that we have noticed some unusual activity on your bank account, and to prevent access being blocked, please visit this URL. As you see, there is here is also this moment of urgency, like to prevent access being blocked. So this should give already some kind of warning to you that it might be a manipulation. But also here is another element you should check. If you get some link to the website, then you should also make sure, is it really real and how you can do it. So in that case, it looks fine that the name of the bank is included on that link, in that link. However, if you look in the end of that link, you see .help. Is it really like a common address for an internet page? We know all that websites are having addresses like .to or .com. So .help should make you quite suspicious and rather never click on that kind of links. And also you have to analyze the information you are provided. On these pictures you see there are like, congratulations to you, you have won $1 million or whatever. So is it really wise to click to that kind of messages to get to know whether you really want something? Our advice is no, never do click on that kind of links, because you never know what is behind that. And the probability that you get some money is really almost zero. Here are also some other examples how you can check your emails. So the first warning for you should be, if you read your email, is it really correctly spelled? If you notice some mistakes, then you should also think that this might be not real email from a real person, but some kind of manipulation again. So mistakes are giving you some advice to get more suspicious. Also, what is a good habit is if you have some kind of links inside your email, just hover on it. Then you will see what is behind the link, because what you see might not be the real link. Behind that, what you see can be a very complicated link, which also tells you that you should never click on that link. So hover. Another warning for you should be if you get very generic greetings. Your bank, for example, they should know what is your name. But if you get emails from your bank with general greetings, then it's not a good sign. Think twice whether you click on these links inside the emails. So these are a few examples that opening the email is not always dangerous, but if you click already on the links inside these emails, this is already when you really act and can activate the next step. Is it some kind of malware or some other kind of attack you get into your computer or your phone? So, but now let's talk more about passwords. Because whatever we dream, the passwords are here to stay, and we should be aware how to use them in best way. So I will give you some advice and show you some good practices when it comes to passwords. And we all have to understand that cybersecurity is everyone's job, that it's also our responsibility to take this time to learn how to create and use passwords safely. And because people are the greatest vulnerability in any organization, whatever the IT specialists do to protect your devices and IT systems, the users of these systems are also playing key role to protect them. So that's why we all should have certain positive attitude and discipline when we really have access to valuable and sensitive information, and dealing with your passwords in a responsible way. This is one part of that attitude and discipline. So what are these most common passwords people use? You might recognize that some of these passwords on the screen are used by yourself as well. At least we have seen these passwords in some systems. But if we already know them, of course, the attackers know them as well, very well. So these kind of passwords are not protecting you at all, because these are the most common passwords, and every attacker knows. So what to do then? How to create a unique and strong password? So you probably have heard and seen on your screen that you should have their acronyms and symbols, but also a good method is to use a phrase that not only simple word, but several words together. So like this example here, we try to use the phrase later, not today, but we can create a password using capital letters, replacing some letters with numbers. And when we combine these things, we get a very safe password, which is long enough and very complicated. The picture below shows also that you can play with your keyboard, like this W helps you to choose and remember a password. This is one option. What is one advice is do not use real words, because it helps attackers to guess your password. How they do it? There are this kind of dictionaries already available for attackers. So if you use simple words, then they just take the dictionary and try all the words in that dictionary. So it will take some time, but this time is really, they can afford it. So simple words you should avoid as password. Also, the length of the password is really important, that it really makes harder to guess your password. It takes just a long time to guess it. So the longer, the better, let's say. But again, there will be limits how to memorize these passwords. So that's why this advice about phrases. So you can create quite long password if you use some kind of phrase. And do not use the same passwords in different systems, because then hackers, attackers, they know already that people use same passwords in different systems. So if they discover one of your passwords, then they can use the same password in other systems as well. Nowadays, if you really have, let's say, tens of systems you have to log in, then a good way to manage all these passwords is a password manager. So there are different software solutions available. Here some examples are given on the picture. Some of them are not free, some of them are free. But what is the purpose of password manager is that what you need to remember one complicated password to access the password manager. But once you are inside the password manager, it's really easy to get the others' passwords wherever you need them in unique and complicated way, but you don't have to memorize it. So you need to know only this main key password to access the password manager. So in case you are working like IT administrator or system owner, I would strongly advise to use this kind of software tools to manage your passwords, which you probably have many. Also, another common rule is you shouldn't really share your passwords with anybody. It's not an act of friendship, but everybody should really have their own passwords. You have to change them regularly, usually. This is also a good habit. And never use your personal information like name or birthday, because this kind of information is accessible also from different channels. And so if somebody really wants to get into your account, they probably will try out your name or birthday as one option to get in. So that was about passwords and the main rules, how to protect your passwords in today's world. So I hope you get some ideas here and you really try to follow them every day. And here are some other examples how you can really increase the level of complexity of your password. Like you just add different symbols or length to the one password. It really makes it more secure and really hard to guess. So here, this simple phrase like Milk Football Monday 2023, if you have this exclamation mark in the end, is one good example how to make it more complex. And then it will take really 6 billion years to guess it. It's long, it's complicated, it has symbols in it, and also capital letters. Here is another example how you can test your email addresses. This website is haveibeenpwned.com. And if you insert your email address here, you might get an answer that somebody already has tried to attack your email box, and even they might be successful. So what to do if you test and you get this kind of message? The first rule, of course, is please go and change your password, because then you reduce the option, the possibility that somebody really gets into your email box. So it's really worth to test out this website, Have I Been Pwned? And to protect your emails or systems, today more and more two-factor authentication is used. And what it means, it's not enough to have a password and username. You have to combine different things. First, something you know. So it might be password, it might be a PIN code, it might be an answer to some kind of security question. But second factor is something you have. It might be your phone, like you get the message and you need to insert additionally another PIN code, what you got through the phone. Or the second factor can be some kind of physical card, like credit cards are a good example that on the back side of the card there is certain code you have to insert to the website. So unless you don't have the card, you are not able to insert this code. So this card is like a second factor. But the second factor can also be something what you are, like your biometric data as your fingerprint or something else. So this is the essence of two-factor. It's not enough just to know something. You need to have or be something as well. And in case you are interested in further reading, on the screen you will see some good guidelines how to create password policy in your institution or organization, because I think every governmental authority needs to have some rules how employees should really use and manage their passwords. So please look and read and amend your guidelines if they feel are not up to date, if you feel they are not up to date today. So now let's look to some other safety tips. We have covered now the main malware attacks. We have already talked about passwords and social engineering. But what else is useful to be and protected and feel safe in online environment? You should be aware that when you charge your smartphone in somewhere outside your office or phone, that if you connect the cables, this kind of activity might be dangerous for a device, because through these cables you can get some infection. So it's good to remember and think about it. Also, when you have some router which you manage, the first rule is you have to really change the default password, because default passwords are known to everybody, and then this password is really not protecting your Wi-Fi network. It's also a good way not to use public Wi-Fi, but create your own hotspot with your smartphone, because then you know from where it comes and you can trust this kind of network more than a public Wi-Fi. And also in your mobile device, do not keep always different options like Bluetooth or GPS constantly on. It's better to turn them off if they are not really used and needed. And of course, VPN is a good option always to use to create an extra security layer, whatever data and information you access. Also, when talking about good behavior, then you should always lock your screen when you leave your workstation. It's not really common, but here this on picture is a good example that this habit can protect you if it's really like a routine. There were riots in Washington, in US, and the people entered the president's office, and so the local employees just ran away without locking their computers, and then these people who were getting in just posted and published in Twitter the website of employees, just bringing them a lot of trouble, and so locking the screen is really easy way to protect your data, and should be practiced every day. What else you should know? If you find something like a flash drive or some other type of media, of course you are curious what is on it, but do you really have to put it and connect it with your own computer, especially if it's your computer you are using at the workplace? Certainly not. You have to know that maybe this piece of media was put there on purpose. The purpose is to give you some infection or some malware into your computer. So do not use this kind of media which you don't know where it comes from, but rather go to IT specialist and tell what you found and give it to them to deal with in a safe environment. Your working computer for sure is not that environment to test these kind of devices you don't know. Also, a very common rule, what you should be aware and always switch it on, is antivirus. It's really essential to protect your digital environment. So this picture shows some common antivirus. and you have to make sure that they are really up to date and switched on all the time. So, and now let's talk about how to use social media. So there is a picture which basically says there are two dogs behind the computer, and one dog says to another that in the internet nobody knows that you are a dog. So yes, we have to be aware that in internet we don't know actually who is on the other side of the screen. Are these people really who they claim to be? We have to be aware that in today's cyberspace, there are a lot of fake accounts. People pretend to be somebody else. They really create accounts on the others' names, or they steal ID of the other people. So we shouldn't really trust everybody in the social media. And if you have a social media account and you get some messages from people you never met before, then you should think, is it really worth to start the conversations with them? And especially also when you post something about you, about your family, about your work, you have to keep in mind that who is seeing what you are posting. Is it really necessary that everybody sees that these messages? So it's a good habit to really regularly review who are your contacts. Do you really know them? And do you really think that they should know about you and about the things you are posting, let's say, in your Facebook account? And also what is good to know that if there is a topic discussed in social media which is controversial or questionable, if you are not sure what is right, what is wrong, then rather avoid to post something from your side, because we do not want that internet will become an uncontrollable environment with fake content. So if you are not sure, rather avoid to use or spread these kind of news. Also, when we think about your privacy and security, how should you act in social media? Well, you should rather limit the information you share about yourself, because you never know how this information might be used. You should protect your data and your devices. And as I said before, these VPN connections help you against identity theft, which is very common in social media accounts, that somebody starts to act and use another account which is not their own. So, and understand the information, what you really share, and think, is it really useful to share? Also, people are feeling more responsible. You can even avoid the common search engines, and there are more private search engines like DuckDuckGo. You might be interested in using these kind of search engines, because we know that by searching information, you also reveal a lot of information about yourself. And the owners of search engines might really use it in a way you don't like. So try to avoid that your footprint in digital world is too big. Try to control it so it really comes back to your behavior in online world. Everybody of us should be a good citizen also in online environment. We know that it's somehow easier to say things in internet which you wouldn't say in phone or text message in face-to-face situation. But you should be aware and also remind your kids to maintain the same level of courtesy online as you do in physical world. Also, be aware that you shouldn't trust your data like mobile phone number to everybody. Follow the rule that you share your information with people you know and have certain trust. And it's also act of courtesy if you really take pictures or videos that you ask permission before you take these pictures or videos from the others. Because I think if you put it vice versa, you wouldn't like your pictures being published in Facebook without your approval. So it's our duty to be a good online citizen. And in Tonga, you also have a good website, stopthinkconnect.gov.to. So go on that website and learn also. There are other tips how to behave in cyberspace and how to become a good online citizen. And this website is available also in your local language. Well, but now a little bit also about your working environment. What are these main processes that guarantee the safe online environment? And what are these good practices? I would say that security starts from the management, that the top management should show the commitment towards cybersecurity. And how they can do it? They first should ensure and establish some security leadership, that they should show the management is committed to that topic, whether putting extra resources there or finding new people like CISO, which means Chief Information Security Officer. So they maybe change the structure of the organization, that there will be new roles who have security responsibilities. So this is the role of the management, to provide the resources for this kind of changes. But also they should show and be as an example of good behavior. So it means they also have to know the best practice, how to behave safely in online environment. This is also another task of the top management, to know how to behave. But what this security framework can be in an organization. So this triangle shows different levels of how this security framework can be built. Let's say on the top there should be common practices to have IT security or cybersecurity policy. Policy document is based on international standards, which explain what kind of security controls to use. Also, procedures should be described, like step-by-step instructions, how to access some IT systems, how to make backups, how to recover from the incident. So these kind of procedures should be existing in every organization. And then there are more options to create a safe environment by generating guidelines, recommendations, and also create some baselines how to implement safeguards in a uniform way. So all these levels should give really a good security base for every organization. And here is a list you may copy and put on your office wall, but this is like in a 10 rules or 10 instructions that everybody should read and memorize, like you have already mentioned, but let's go through all of them. So update your devices and applications. Use different passwords, not the same one for different systems. Make sure your password is strong. Do not share your passwords and do not insert them into suspicious websites. Use multi-factor authentication when you are accessing your emails. Avoid attachment and hyperlinks sent by unknown persons. Check the source of the senders, let's say email addresses of the senders. Back up your data and files regularly. Read about the most common cyber threats. And make sure you know who to turn to in case of a serious cyber incident. So if you follow these 10 instructions, I think you are already in a quite good position and you and your organization will be much more secure. As I mentioned in the beginning of this lecture, that our e-governance academy conducted a project in Tonga in the last 2 years. And one of our tasks was to help government institutions to introduce processes which really help governmental institutions to be prepared and mitigate the cyber risks. And we have created a Tonga Cybersecurity Manual. So I will briefly introduce this manual that you know that in future how to use it and what is the purpose of that manual. So the purpose is to provide strategic and practical guidance how organizations in Tonga can protect their systems and data from cyber threats. And this manual, as I said, it's really targeted for Tonga government agencies. However, if private sector companies are interested in, so it's universal. So it can be used also, and it's really available on the website of Tongan government. So let's have a closer look. What are the parts of that manual? There are 6 different steps or actions you should take to increase the cybersecurity of your organization. And it starts from the asset inventory. Every organization should know what kind of assets they really own. What are the IT systems they use? So the list of assets is the first step to really start the management of cybersecurity in your organization. Then the Tonga Cybersecurity Manual helps you to create risk scenarios. We have published there a bunch of risk scenarios which you may use to analyze the situation in your organization. And the scenarios can be used to assess how big is the risk. Once you have really assessed your risks, and let's say you know which risks are higher, which are lower, then you have to treat these risks. And so the manual gives you options how to treat the risk. And after that, you should monitor whether you implement these controls, what you chose to treat the risk, and are they really effective? So let's have a closer look to some definitions. When we talk about cybersecurity, what we really mean by security? We mean by security that we have to protect the confidentiality of your data or IT system, but not only confidentiality, but also integrity of your data is really important to protect. That data should be correct and should be maintained as it was meant to be. And also the third aspect of security is data availability. If you don't have access to your data, then this system is not secure. So confidentiality, integrity, availability are subcomponents of IT security or cybersecurity. And if you look at the definition of risk, we should be aware that risk can be described to different elements. That risk means that there is a potential for loss, damage, or destruction of an asset as a result of a threat exploiting a vulnerability. So the definition is quite complicated, but it means that there are threats around us. Our assets have some vulnerabilities, and if these threats are really targeting or using our vulnerabilities, it has a certain impact or consequence. Altogether, this is called risks. And international standards give us good advice what kind of threats we really can face. So there is no need to really figure out ourselves what are today's risks to the cyberspace. So here is an example from the international ISO 27005 standard. And this is only part of threats that are described in that standard. So when you are starting to analyze your systems, then please use these international sources of information. And as I said, in our project, we created also another tool. It's an Excel table also available in government's website called Risk Register. And this helps you analyze the risks, find the most common risks that are applicable to your systems. And we recommend to use risk scenarios because smaller organizations, it's really easier and more simple to assess the risk based on scenario than, let's say, on granular level risks for every IT system. It's really time-consuming and difficult to do. So risk scenarios are recommendable for assessment. And when you assess your risk, you have to really assess the impact of some incident. And we propose you like 3-level scale for that. what is the impact if this risk is really coming through. And also the second element you have to assess is the likelihood, how often this kind of incident can really occur. So I will not go into the detail, but also the likelihood can be assessed in a 3-level scale, like there is a low possibility, medium possibility, or high possibility. And after you have assessed this likelihood and impact, you get the risk level for every risk scenario. And as you see already here, that this risk level comes from, you have to multiply the impact and likelihood. So if there is a medium impact and medium likelihood, you get the value 4, which shows it's a yellow, it's a medium level risk. So if you get the high impact and high likelihood, then of course this is really the highest risk. And you should think that you have to treat these risks which are the highest, because these risks are unacceptable. If you have like middle level risks, then you may choose some mitigation levels, but maybe not all of them. And some risks you can just leave and accept that these risks remain, and you do not treat them really specifically. And what this risk treatment really means, that it means that you create some kind of action plan. That what are the activities you will implement to reduce the risk. And in this action plan, you should have a description of the activity, but also the dates and deadlines. Is it regular activity? Who is responsible person? What is exactly the action? And what kind of resources are needed? And also it's also recommended to describe the current status, that later on you can compare what was in the past and what is the new situation after you have really implemented the risk action plan. And as I said, some risks can be accepted. Then it should be kind of decision also clear for everybody, like management really approves that this risk will not be treated. So also everybody else in the organization knows that this is the risk we decided to accept. So this is one way to really manage the risks, whether you treat them or accept them. And for treating the risks, you have to find appropriate security controls. And now I show this website I was talking about. You should see also this URL of this Tonga Cybersecurity Manual website. It's tcm.gov.to. So if you go to that website, you will find the manual. And now on the picture, you will see the options for risk treatment. It's a sub-chapter in the manual, and there are really 13 different sub-chapters also for treatment. So if you decide to treat the risk and find appropriate security controls, this is the page you should go and choose what kind of controls you want to apply. Is it like some rules for access control? Then you go to the 4th chapter here and read what are the options, what kind of security controls can be used, and you can choose the controls which are appropriate to your organization. So this manual should give you advice and guidance to not only analyze the risk, but also to choose security measures or security controls. There are really thousands of security controls. And also here I show you some links to different websites which might help you additionally if Tonga Cybersecurity Manual is not detailed enough or you need more information, then these websites shown on the screen might be useful also for you. And some of them are really freely usable, like CIS controls or NIST page. This is a US source and internationally accepted IT security standard. And also on the next page, if you are interested to update or renew or even generate a business continuity plan for some of your systems, then these links give you examples how this plan should look like, what is a best practice. So now I would wrap it up. And this last part was more or less how you should behave inside your organization and how you should conduct the risk assessment and treat the risks. But before that, I was talking about your personal involvement and how you should behave and act to make the cyberspace more secure. So I really hope this video was helpful to you, and I hope you will follow these good guidelines. Thank you very much for watching.